You know, when Hank Green and Bernie Sanders got together to talk about artificial intelligence, it wasn't just another dry tech discussion. Nope, it was a deep dive into power, into what we even mean by progress, and really into the future of all of us. So let's unpack what this incredible conversation tells us about the wild moment we're all living through right now.
So right out of the gate, Hank Green drops this bombshell of an idea. He says we're not just dealing with one massive, society-altering change. We're dealing with two, and they're happening at the exact same time. The first is this revolution in how we all talk to each other, and the second, of course, is AI, a revolution in, well, pretty much everything. So what does that actually mean? What happens when you have two world-shaking shifts just stacked right on top of each other like this? Think about it. The internet revolution completely changed the game. For the first time ever, we got many-to-many communication. But as Hank Green points out, we're still in the hard part of figuring out how to handle that. And now, while we're still wrestling with that first revolution, we're throwing the AI revolution into the mix, which could change everything from our jobs to our biology. The real worry here is that we're adding a second huge destabilizing force before we've even gotten a handle on the first one.
And, this kind of rapid change immediately brings up a huge political question, which is exactly where Bernie Sanders jumps into the conversation. Who's actually in the driver's seat for this whole thing?
For Sanders, this is the question. It's the starting point for everything else. Before we can even get into the nuts and bolts of the technology, we have to ask, who are the people behind it?
And believe me, he doesn't beat around the bush. He names names. He points to this small handful of multi-billionaires, literally some of the richest and most powerful people on the planet, who are, for all intents and purposes, steering the ship on AI development for the rest of humanity.
And this really gets to the core of what Sanders is worried about. It's all about motivation. What's their end game? He basically says, look, their primary goal isn't necessarily about making life better for everybody. It's about getting more wealth and more power for themselves. And that, he argues, should have us all paying very, very close attention.
Okay, so if you're worried about the motivation behind all this, it naturally leads you to think about some of the worst-case scenarios, right? Let's break down the three really alarming ones that came up in their talk.
First up, the big one, economic chaos. I mean, what happens if AI really does wipe out millions and millions of jobs, like even some of its biggest fans think it might? We're not just talking about people being out of work. Where does the money for crucial things like Social Security and Medicare come from if that tax base just evaporates?
The second scenario is, well, it's pretty terrifying. They talk about this thing called P-doom. It's basically the probability of doom. And get this, Geoffrey Hinton, one of the guys who literally helped create modern AI, puts the chance that it could wipe out humanity at a chilling 10 to 20%. Wow. Sanders' point is, even if there's just a tiny chance of something that catastrophic, shouldn't we be hitting the emergency brake?
And the third one, this one hits a little closer to home. It's about what happens to us as people. What happens to real human connection when we, and especially our kids, start getting our main emotional support from an AI? Are we just going to make the problems we already have with loneliness and isolation 100 times worse?
So you've got these massive, scary risks on the table. The conversation then pivots to a solution that sounds almost too simple. Hey, what if we just pump the brakes a little?
And the logic for stepping in is actually pretty straightforward when you lay it out like this. First, you have the industry itself admitting there's a huge risk. We're talking over 1,000 AI leaders, even Elon Musk, signing a letter saying, hey, let's slow down. Then, in that same letter, they say that if the industry can't regulate itself, the government should make them. So the idea of something like a moratorium on new data centers, well, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's basically a tool to enforce the very pause that the experts themselves were calling for.
And when you peel back all the layers of this AI debate, you're left with a much bigger, more fundamental question.
And this right here really puts it all into perspective. Sanders lays out the numbers, and they're just staggering. We're looking at something like $700 billion a year being poured into data centers, $1 trillion into the military, and at the same time, massive problems like childhood poverty and the housing crisis are just chronically underfunded. The point isn't that technology is bad, it's a question of, hey, are our priorities straight as a country?
And that right there is really what this all boils down to. This whole conversation between Hank Green and Bernie Sanders, it shows us the debate over AI isn't really about algorithms or processing power. It's about our values. It's about us having to decide together what kind of world we actually want to build.
Which leaves us with this one last, absolutely crucial question to think about. In a democracy,
Who gets to make these kinds of decisions that will literally shape the future of humanity? Should it be a tiny group of billionaires, or should it be all of us?